Mr. Andre Walker joins me in the studio, worked with Steve Bannon at Breitbart for 2 years back, 2014 to 2016.
That's right.
Give us a little insight, first of all, into what kind of a guy he is.
Well, look, I mean, I used to work as a House of Commons staffer before I worked at Breitbart, and you're pretty used to, as a House of Commons staffer, people being very polite and friendly to your face and then stabbing you in the back. Steve Bannon is absolutely not like that. He's very direct, he's very, very focused. He seemed to only sleep for sort of 3 or 4 hours a night, which was pretty incredible. But yeah, I mean, I can understand how the Washington establishment hated him because of how direct he was, and certainly the policies view that he held. But then again, he hates them as well, so it was kind of a mutual feeling.
But that directness and that tough talking makes us think, well, Trump would like that. We see him being a man who kind of speaks his mind, puts it out there. So what unravelled the relationship there?
I think the Bannon narrative would be that the big problem here is that not everybody within the White House is ideologically on side. There are a series of people that are more like the Republican establishment that Steve Bannon hates. And so Bannon, I think, sometimes felt isolated within the White House, but he certainly feels, and I think he's got good reason to feel this, that he is the person that's the link between that surge of people that got Donald Trump into the White House and Donald Trump himself. Now, whether Donald Trump felt that Steve Bannon, by being that guy in the middle, was getting a bit too big for his boots, I don't know. But I would argue that had Bannon not been on side, Trump would never have had the phenomenal success he had. You needed that Breitbart, you needed the insurgency, and Bannon was the guy who led that insurgency. So
with the loss of Bannon, do we now see a change in tone, a change in policy direction in the White House?
Well, Steve Bannon himself said that the presidency, the Trump presidency that he'd voted for and he'd supported was now dead. And I think what he means by that is that there's no longer an automatic assumption that all of the policies that he wants to push through will necessarily be enacted. I think it's now on a case-by-case basis, and the case will have to be made by the right of the Republican Party as it's made by the moderates within the Republican Party. And that's why you hear Bannon saying, I've got my weapon back. I'm back at Breitbart. I've now got kind of the power to push forward that agenda. And he will be galvanising people in the way that only Steve Bannon can. He will be motivating them. And what he will say is, he will say, look, it's not Trump, it's the people around him. And then I think Breitbart will launch a pretty savage attack on those people. You saw it already with H.R. McMaster's. Breitbart will not be impressed with those people that they see as the swamp. In fact, I said earlier to somebody that the big problem here is that Trump was supposed to drain the swamp, not drown Bannon in the swamp.
But there will be people, as you said, that the more moderates in the Republican Party who will be pleased to see the back of him and hope that there will be a change of vision.
Oh, without a doubt, there will be people. But then again, I mean, if you think about it, you know, it's been quite difficult so far. They've not got through the reform of Obamacare, which was something that really the moderates stifled. So I think that the right of the Republicans, or if you want to even call them the right of the Republicans, the right of the Trump movement, the Breitbart people, certainly they will be kicking back as well. And having their standard bearer, their man-in-chief, their chief of staff back at Breitbart has got to enhance that.
And for people who weren't familiar with Breitbart, give us a sense of the power that he may now wield, Bannon being back there and in charge of something where he can be a bit more freewheeling.
Yeah, well, so the difference really between Breitbart and the BBC is not necessarily an issue of neutrality. It's more to do with the fact that they're really big on social media. So they're the 13th most shared website on Facebook, which eclipses even the BBC. And you see the BBC as such a large organisation, but even it doesn't have that sort of power. So what they do is they write up articles that really, you know, talk about issues that people don't normally talk about, specifically on things like immigration and terrorism, and they are shared pretty massively. And so the ability to shape that message and also to be pretty famous, as Steve Bannon is now, will be significant. Breitbart is, by the way, the 73rd most popular website in America, which makes it a leviathan.
And you and I were just chatting before you came on air, and you were saying, I mean, it was interesting that Bannon was back in to Breitbart very speedily. It wasn't a sort of, I'll go and have a holiday for 2 weeks now, I'm not in the Oval Office helping Trump. I mean, he wanted to get his hands back on the power. It
predates it. I mean, he was with they often call him the Republican super donor, Robert Mercer, but he was with Robert Mercer on Wednesday night. Robert is the biggest shareholder, or one of the biggest shareholders in Breitbart. So presumably, and I don't have any inside knowledge on this, but presumably if they were talking on Wednesday and he's back on Friday, he was talking, by the way, before he was fired to Mercer. You may
have seen the writing on the wall.
And probably there will be another big increase in Breitbart's funding and its power.
OK, really interesting. Andre Walker from the New York Observer, thanks very much.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.